I have an amendment at the desk, which was pre-printed in the record as amendment number 1 to H.R. 2681.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 1, printed in the congressional record, offered by Ms. Schakowsky of Illinois.
Gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My amendment is simple. It would include in the findings the scientific fact that mercury released into the ambient air from cement kilns is a potent neurotoxin that can damage the development of an infant's brain. Let me just read you the find. It says the Congress finds that mercury released into the ambient air from cement kilns addressed in this act is a potent neurotoxin that can damage the development of an infant's brain. That is just fact. This is not up for debate. That is just a fact and should be acknowledged in the legislation that mercury is one of the most harmful toxics in our environment. 48 tons of mercury is pumped into our air each year, threatening 1 in 6 women nationwide with dangerous levels of mercury exposure. Pregnant women, infants, and young children are most vulnerable to mercury poisoning, which harms a developing child's ability to walk, talk, read, write, and comprehend. Developing fetuses and children are especially at risk to even low-level mercury exposure that causes adverse health effects. Up to 10% of U.S. women of childbearing age are estimated to have mercury levels high enough to put their developing children at increased risk for cognitive problems. Cement kilns are among the largest sources of airborne mercury pollution in the United States, and there is existing technology right now that would prevent that. When mercury is pumped into our air, very often it ends up in the bodies of water and is ingested by fish. Mercury-contaminated fish are found in almost every American body of water, and eating contaminated fish is the dominant cause of mercury exposure in people. This is a serious problem in my home state of Illinois. In April, Environment Illinois issued a report showing that the amount of mercury in the average sport fish tested in 36 counties exceeds the EPA safe limit for regular consumption. Due to this contamination, the Illinois Department of Public Health warns women and children to limit their consumption of fish. Illinois is not unlike other states. According to the EPA, nearly every fish nationwide contains mercury. The EPA actually advises women who are pregnant or who may become pregnant to eat no more than 12 ounces of any fish per week, and to eat limited or no amounts of fish that have high mercury content. That advisory has also been issued for infants and children. That's because we know, beyond any scientific doubt, that mercury inhibits brain development in the fetal and early childhood development stages. EPA analysis and peer-reviewed studies show that mercury leads to increased incidence of neurological disorders, increased incidence of learning disabilities, and increased incidences in developmental delay. The EPA cement plant standards would reduce this major threat without undue burden to industry. The standards will lower the mercury exposure of more than 100,000 women of childbearing age in Illinois whose blood mercury levels exceed the recommended limit. When fully implemented, EPA estimates that mercury emissions from cement kilns will be reduced by 92%. The legislation we consider today will block EPA's efforts. It will send EPA back to the drawing board with new, untested, and legally vulnerable guidance for setting air pollution standards. My colleagues across the aisle talk a lot about not wanting to burden the next generation with debt. Where is their concern with burdening the next generation with reduced brain capacity? H.R. 2681 patently ignores the scientifically proven fact that mercury exposure inhibits brain development, especially in infants. If we are prepared to pass legislation that would jeopardize the health of children by increasing mercury emissions, we should be willing to acknowledge the scientific fact that EPA inaction poses a serious health risk. My colleague, previous colleague from Illinois who spoke said we have different philosophies. I hope not. I hope we agree that it is a rightful function of government to say that we don't want to overburden industry, but we do want to say that our job is to protect the health and safety of the people of the United States.
Gentlewoman's time has
Mercury
expired.
is a danger. That is proven. And so I urge my colleagues to support this simple amendment. And I yield back.